Democratic lawmakers are moving ahead with a plan to make California a sanctuary state. There's a bill that's already passed a Senate committee, so it's on its way to turn California into a sanctuary state. We've talked about sanctuary cities.
Yes, but this would be the whole state of California. What does this mean? Senator Joel Anderson has been nice enough to get up early in the morning and join us here on Good Morning San Diego.
Good morning,
Senator.
It's always a pleasure.
Good morning. I know you're emotional about this. You were on this committee when the vote went down. You were one of chair. You're the vice chair, and you were one of 2 votes that voted against it, but it got out of committee.
Right.
What does this do when we say sanctuary state? What are we saying?
Well, look, you can make a strong argument of why Dreamers should be protected, but this goes much further than that. It protects felons in our prisons from being deported. So we're talking about child molesters, we're talking about rapists, we're talking about murderers, we're talking about people that are serial DUIs that commit time and time again the crimes. You can't be a crime denier. We know that we have them in our prisons, and they should be deported. If we shield them from deportation, that means they're going to be returned to our communities. I don't need any more pedophiles in my district. I don't need any more murderers or rapists. We have enough homegrown crime. We don't need to import it.
So explain what the law would mandate. Would it keep law enforcement, police, and other local law enforcement from providing information?
Right. So right now you have police departments, sheriffs, and correctional officers in our prisons that sign MOUs, and they're deputized by the federal government to help with immigration. It prohibits them from doing that. So if you have an MOU in some of our jails,
an MOU?
That's a memorandum of understanding. Okay. So it's an agreement between the 2 entities. Mm-hmm. If this goes through, some of the jails and prisons have ICE in the prisons looking for it. Now, mind you, if a person's there and they have violated federal law, it's the federal government's responsibility to pay for their time in that prison. So we won't even be able to recoup what we've paid to do their job. But the biggest issue is it prohibits them from communicating with ICE. So if ICE calls and says, is this person, when are they going to be released? They may be serving a 10 or 20-year term, but at the end of that term, they're going to be released back into our communities. So if they ask, when's that release date, they're not allowed to answer. So if you have 100 people, and the first thing that people always want to say is, you must believe that everybody here that's an immigrant is a criminal. That's just crazy talk. But to be a crime denier and say that we have no illegals in our prisons is absolutely outrageous. So if you had 100 of them and you could only process 1 a week, wouldn't you want to process the 1 prior to being released back into our community? Of course you would. And yet this prohibits it. Our top cop, our Attorney General Becerra, who just got sworn in, he even agrees that the most heinous of criminals must be deported. And yet this law would prohibit him from deporting those criminals.
Goodness gracious. And now we're talking about a legislature that is, the supermajority is Democrat.
Right.
So this got out of committee. This is now headed toward both houses. Is this thing going to pass?
Oh, it passed overwhelmingly. And one of my colleagues, Senator Stone from Riverside, he asked point blank, would you be willing to make a carve-out to address this issue? And we can argue whether Dreamers can stay or go, but this issue we all should agree on, that no felon is allowed to return to our community. And the President Pro Tem, the author of this bill, hemmed and hawed, but refused to say yes. You know, if you're not willing to say yes, then that's a no. So quit dancing and just be honest. You don't see a difference between Dreamers and hardened criminals. And the worst part is, even if you want to help the Dreamers, when these pedophiles, these rapists and murderers are returned to our community, they prey on those people as much as any U.S. citizen. This is not good for our community. And when people get so emotional that they lose track of common sense, the people need to speak up. And that's why I'm asking people to go to my state website. There's a little button on the site. You click it, you can add your name to a petition. I want to present the names to the author so that he can correct that. And whether we agree on the other parts of the bill or not, we won't be putting people's lives in jeopardy.
You know, here in San Diego County, Sheriff Bill Gore just came on the show earlier in the week and talked about how at our jails right now, there are ICE agents,
right,
Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, who check the immigration status of those that are detained. So my question is, what would change?
They would be evicted.
If these ICE agents are already in our jails.
They would be evicted.
The ICE agents would be kicked out?
They would be prohibited from being there. If the bill's not corrected, they're going to be prohibited to be there. We're going to shield those felons, those who committed heinous crimes, from any assistance with ICE to remove them and deport them. I don't want them returning to our communities. By the way, I don't want to rush them out of our prisons to deport them. I want them to serve their sentence and then be deported.
Right.
So
now, let me...
And by the way, the sheriff does a fantastic job. I talked to him about this, and he said, well, we're seamless, and it works great. I don't think he saw the bill when I spoke to him. It won't be so seamless anymore.
Yeah. Interesting.
So now, do we, the president has been threatening basically loss of federal money for the sanctuary cities. So if we become a sanctuary state, what does that do, in terms of our relation with Washington?
Well, so a lot of the monies that we get are grants for law enforcement. So when ICE is in the jails, ICE is paying rent. They're paying for that access. Of course, you're not going to pay somebody if you don't get a return on that investment. And they're not going to pay the sheriff any more money if they don't have that access. So it's not like it's a punitive action. It's about, I don't pay for a product I can't get. And that product is, I've rented space, I've asked for access, you've denied me space, you've denied me access, so I shouldn't have to pay anymore. So everyone's trying to spin out of control. This is really quite logical as we move forward, and all I'm trying to do is introduce some common sense because, our top cop, we talk to anybody in law enforcement, they don't want to see those hardened criminals return to our communities. And I just can't understand why the supermajority is so hell-bent. Now, I'll tell you, one of our local senators from South Bay has a bill that provides legal defense to all the dreamers who are deported. But he did a carve-out so it doesn't defend felons.
Which you think is smart.
Oh, absolutely. So even he agrees. And you should have him on the show. They changed the Senate rules. I'm not supposed to say his name. So I can only say...
Okay, we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
But it's my good friend from South Bay.
Okay, and, got it.
But he has this bill, and he can make a very strong argument of why taxpayers of California should be defending these folks. We can debate that issue.
Right.
But I think that
But carving out the criminals is a good idea.
Right. Because everybody thinks that's smart. And I'm hoping that people come to my website, click the button, sign on, so that I have a huge stack by Monday and Tuesday to hand to the President Pro Tem, the author of this bill, and get him to put a carve-out for felons.
Can I ask you one question? And I don't know if you know anything about that. We just did a story earlier about lawmakers in Sacramento regulating the price of hotels along the coast so people can afford hotel rooms during the summer.
All right, so...
Okay, tell me about that. Since when do lawmakers get in the business of regulating the price of privately owned hotels? Unless these hotels are owned by the government.
Dan,
seriously,
we're the fourth
what is going on?
We're the fourth week in, and I can give you a list of 25 crazy ideas. And, when I first got elected, I read every bill. Well, some of those bills never make it to my committee, and I realize I read on need-to-know basis. So I'm hoping I never have to read that bill that gets killed. We start off, and generally, we have about 3,000 bill ideas get introduced every year.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
there hasn't been 3,000.
There hasn't, well, it's up to 3,000.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's only 2,000.
Wow.
But I can assure you, there hasn't been 3,000 good ideas in the history of man. So if you just start with that...
Good to know. And, by the way, a similar bill like you guys, it's failed before. So.
Right. Well, I think there's a distinction too, Dan. We laugh about that bill, and we know how silly it is, but no one's going to die. What I'm talking about now, why I'm so laser focused, is I'm the Vice Chair of Public Safety. Protecting our citizens is my #1 job. And when I look at this bill, returning child molesters, returning murderers and rapists to our communities, I don't even know where to begin. This is just craziness.
And you got to say to yourself, who thinks this is a good idea? And apparently there are a bunch of people up there
Well,
who think it's a good idea.
All
Well,
the
the other
people who
argument,
voted
though,
for it in
is-
my committee, I mean, clearly they do.
Wouldn't the other argument be, well, why not beef up on the federal side, add more ICE agents so that they're out there doing their jobs, you know, doing these checks?
But even if you do that and you call the prison system and you say, when is that person
Why
going to
do
be
they
paroled?
have to call the prison system? Why can't they just
Because we
look
have
at the system online?
Well, they can, but it won't tell them what prison they're in. So we have prisons from the top of the state to the bottom of the state. So if I call in and I say I want to serve this warrant on that person, but you're going to play hide the pea and not tell me which prison to go to. I mean, are we in the business of shielding and protecting hardened criminals?
I didn't think so.
Not. So why would you prohibit them from saying when they're going to be paroled, from saying what prison they're in, from saying, or why would you insist on evicting ICE out of our jails and out of, you know, I don't get why we wouldn't want to assist ICE to the best of our ability to ensure hardened felons, you know, molesters, rapists, murderers from returning to our community. It's just good common sense.
All right, so
Well, keep us posted. Let us know what happens on Tuesday when you submit your
Hey, I want to do
signatures
just a quick shout out. So we sent this out to all the other stations because I think that this is really incredible. Only one station stepped up. Kudos to KUSI. Kudos to you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's a big issue.
it's a huge topic. I mean, we need to know what's going on up there.
Sanctuary state.
All right.
Possibly.
Sanctuary
We
state.
will see. Okay. Thank you,
Senator.
Anderson.
It's my pleasure.
Nice
Thank
to
you.
see you.
Thank you. Your website is available, I'm sure. Senator Joel Anderson.
As soon as you Google it, it pops up. So
Okay.
it makes it very easy.
Very good.
Thank you, sir.
Have a wonderful day.